Hello everyone and welcome to the Stitch Sessions. We've got a fun tutorial for you this week. It is the granny rectangle scarf. So many of you have really loved my rectangular motifs, most especially the granny rectangle. You love the solid rectangle. You definitely like the granny shell, the traditional granny shell rectangle. And so I thought, why not show everyone how to make a scarf? And so this way you can work on making a much longer rectangle. And as well, for those of you that like working on scarves lengthwise, this is a great project for you. So you can work it lengthwise and in the round. So it's actually super easy to make. If you love granny motifs, and you love the shell stitch, this project is for you. Now, if you're new here, I'm Karen, and I love all things to do with crafting with crochet. So I've always got, different ideas and designs to do with crochet. And today happens to be a scarf tutorial, especially with the cool weather settling in now. And this actually was a scrap project. So this was a lot of leftover yarns from previous projects, and it worked out perfectly, I have to say. And then I had a whole bunch of white leftover that I used as a border. So it looks like it's done on purpose, but it's all created using scrap yarn. So this is fantastic if you're looking for ideas on how to use up all of that leftover yarn. So that's about it. You are gonna love working on this. Super easy stitch. And it doesn't take you very long to whip up. Now, I created mine using 8 rounds, but you, of course, can make yours wider if you wish. Just add more rounds. And we are pretty much good to go. So let's just quickly talk about the materials we're going to need for this project, and then let's just dive right in and get started stitching up our rectangle scarf. Okay, so I've got all of my scrap yarn here, and I would say you will need approximately 200 to 250 grams, so about 400 yards or 300 meters. Of course, it will always depend on the length. If you want yours longer, you will need more. So I've gathered all mine here. You also want to make sure that they're all relatively the same yarn weight. And there's always some funny business happening because even though these all have a label of medium 4, not all medium 4s are created equal. And I know you guys have heard me say this in other tutorials. So you'll notice that this is the pink is a medium 4 and so is the purple. But for some reason, the pink to me looks like it's thinner. So all we're going to do is just do our best. Relatively, you want them kind of sitting the same. I know for a fact that actually this was labeled I think a bulky 5 actually, but it is pretty comparable when you put them together. And the fact that the colorways went very, very well. I just really wanted to use up these scraps. So this is the yarn I'm using, medium 4 weight in general. And the hook size is going to be a 6mm hook, which is also known as a J or a size 10. And then of course, make sure you have a pair of scissors on hand, and always make sure you have a yarn needle to sew in any of your ends. And if you're newer, make sure that it is a yarn needle and not a thread needle. You can see that eye is a little bit larger. So let's get started on our granny scarf. Okay, so I'm going to begin with the darkest color first. I know dark yarn isn't always the best on camera, but it's for such a short period of time. I'm hoping that you guys will be okay with it. So I'm just going to make sure we do lots of close-ups here. So I'm going to begin by placing a slip knot onto my hook. And now I'm going to chain up 240 stitches. So we want our length to be in multiples of 3. So you're just going to keep stitching up in sets of 3. And for me, I'm going to stitch up a total of 240 chains. Just make sure that you don't stitch too tightly. So I'll meet up with you when you've got your 240 chains. Okay, I've got my 240 chains, and I've got a long chain here. So we're working our scarf lengthwise, okay? And now we are going to begin to create the granny triangle shape. So what we're going to do now is we want to find the 4th chain from our hook. Remember, the loop that's on the hook never counts. So we count 1, 2, 3, and 4. And into that 4th chain, we are going to place a double crochet. Okay. And then back into that same stitch, we are going to place another double crochet. So, So these first 3 chains do count as a double crochet. We placed another 2 double crochets, so we've got a shell stitch. This will represent our short side, okay? So we are now going to create a corner, and we're going to do that by chaining 2, 1, 2, and into the next stitch. So see, we did our shell there. Into the next stitch, we are going to place a shell stitch, which is 3 double crochets. So we have 1, 2, and then we have 3. So all of them are into 1 stitch. Okay, just like that. So you can really see that the corner has taken shape. So that chain 3 and those 2 double crochets count as the first shell, which is our short side, created a corner, and now we're going to work along our long side. So now we are going to skip the next 2 chains. So we have 1 and 2, and into the 3rd chain, we are going to place a shell stitch. And that is what we're going to repeat all the way down our chain. So we have 1, back into the same stitch, 2, back again into the same stitch for our 3rd stitch. We skip 2 stitches, 1, 2, and into the 3rd, we repeat. And that is it. That is all you're going to do all the way until you get to the end of your chain, and at that point you will have 1 stitch left. Okay, so there you go. So you can see that's where our corner is, and now you're just going to work down the chain. Okay, so you're going to pause because it's going to take you a little bit, and you're going to do your shells all the way down, and then I'm going to meet up with you all the way over here when you have 1 chain left. Okay, so I'm at the end of my row, and I have a total of 79 shells. Now that does not include that corner shell. So this shell would be 80, but I'm just counting along the side. So if you're curious as to how many shells or how many stitches, just take the number of shells and multiply it by 3. So I have 79 shells all the way down my length. And when I've come down to the end here, I now have 1 stitch left right there. So this is where we're now going to create our next corner and our next short side to come around and then work along the bottom of our very long rectangle. So what we're going to do is we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and then into that last stitch, so I'm just pulling it apart there, we are going to place a shell stitch. So the chain 2 always creates a corner. Some people chain 3. If you're a very tight crocheter, then go ahead and chain 3, but for the most part, I always chain 2. So I'm going to place 3 double crochets here. There we go. So now you can see the corner's been created, and now we have our short side. So now we are going to come around and we're going to work along the bottom side here. So that means we need to come around the next corner. So we're going to chain 2, again, 1, 2, and now we're going to work into the bottoms of all of the shell stitches from the other side. So you can see that there, okay? So we're going to go right away into this space here. Now this first round, you're going to feel like these chains are getting stretched, that's totally normal. It'll all relax once we get subsequent rounds going. So into this space here, or that chain, which is the bottom of that shell, got my little tail there, we're gonna place a shell. So now it's gonna be a little easier to find your place. Not so much counting is involved. So we have 2, and then we have 3. Okay, so now you can really see the short end of our rectangles. It's a very, very, very skinny rectangle. So you have a corner, a shell, and a corner, okay? And now you're just gonna find all of your chains that are stretched out, and you're just gonna place a shell on top of, or in this case, underneath the shell of the round on the other side. So I'm just gonna do another one here, just like that. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. You're gonna get really good at doing shells if you haven't done that many up until now. So this is what you're gonna do now all the way back to the very beginning. And so I'm gonna meet up with you once you finish this last shell here. So see, this is the short side that we started with, first corner. So you're gonna end here, and then we're gonna create our last corner, but I'm gonna meet up with you there. So one shell into the bottom of every shell, and I'll see you back here in a bit. Okay, so I have come to the end of my first round. So I've just done a shell into the last one. As you can see, I've had to change colors already. I was really hoping that I was gonna get a full round, but I got about 2/3 of the way there, and then I had to change my color, but it's all right. This is definitely meant to use up all my scraps, so I am good with that. So just have to sew in that tail afterwards. And I actually went down to the 5mm hook because this yarn is just slightly denser. It's a little bulkier, so I just wanted to make sure it kind of crunched down a little bit and was a little bit more even with the medium form, which I'm very happy with that. So that is why you're gonna see this 5mm hook. Okay, we need to create our last corner and finish off our round. So we're going to chain 2. So the chain 2 always helps us kind of come around the bend here. And now we're gonna find the top of that chain 3, and we are going to slip stitch to join. Just like that. And round 1 is complete, okay? So I have 79 shells on each side. So that's gonna give me 158 shells. Plus I have 1 shell on each end. So now I'm gonna have a total of 160 shells. And that's just, for those of you that really, really wanna keep track with exactly how I'm doing mine, 160 shells all the way around for round number 1. And if you want to count the exact number of stitches, just multiply that by 3. Now, I never count the chain 2s in the corners when I'm counting my stitch count, okay? So now let's go on to round number 2. Okay, so we're going to begin round number 2, and when creating any type of motif that has corners, I always like to begin in the corner. So what we're going to do is we're just going to slip stitch over to that corner, and I'm just going to do that nice and loose. So slip stitch into the next, and then slip stitch into the space. Okay, so you have something that looks like that. Okay, and now we're going to begin by chaining 5. So we have 1, 2, 3. These 3 are going to count as a double crochet, and then we have 4 and 5 are going to count as that corner. Okay, so that chain that bends the corner. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back into the space, and we're going to place 3 double crochets in here. So we're going to place a shell stitch, and this is how I like to begin all of my rounds when I'm working on granny motifs. And I'll show you why in a second. Okay, so we've got one shell, we've got chain 2, and then technically we have a double crochet. So I did not do a full shell stitch. The reason why I like to do this is when I come back all the way around, I will finish this shell by placing 2 more double crochets and slip stitching at the top of the 3rd chain. Why I do it like this is because it always guarantees that I will end in a corner space. Therefore, I can begin the next round in a corner space, and I do not have to do this here. I'm not really a big fan of slip stitching over, especially, see, because I've got 2 different colors. So this way, it guarantees that I always start in a corner. So now we're moving out of the corner, and we are going to work the traditional granny shell stripe, which means that we're always going to work into the spaces between the shells. So now we are going to go into the first space here, and you're going to place a shell stitch. So we have 1, 2 double crochets, and then we have a 3rd double crochet. Okay, so this is our partial corner and our first shell here. Okay, then we're going to go into the next space and do the same thing. Insert your hook and place 3 double crochets. Like, you are going to get so good at doing shell stitches and practicing double crochet stitches. If you're super new, you're going to be amazing by the time you're done. And then into the next stitch, we do the same thing. So you get the gist. This is what you're going to do all the way down to the end. And when you reach your first corner, your first full corner, so see, it's looking something like that. So you're going to do that all the way to the end. And once you reach this first corner here, I will meet up with you just to take you through how to create a full corner if you haven't done this before. Okay, so I have come down to my first full corner, and this is how we're going to do corners for every subsequent round. So just on my last shell here, and now I'm in a corner space. So we're going to place a shell stitch, which is 3 double crochets. Then we're going to chain 2 and place 1 more shell stitch. Again, if you are very familiar with doing granny squares, this should be very familiar to you. So I've just done a shell stitch. Now I'm going to chain 2, and I'm going to go back into this corner, and don't be afraid to push the stitches aside. I'm going to go back into that space and place another shell. So that's 3 double crochets. And then I have 1 more. And there is my corner. So now that we've established the first round, every round now when we come to a corner, shell, chain 2, shell. Now this is still a very short side, so the very next space is another corner. So we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to place a shell stitch, which is 3 double crochets, which you guys should know very well by now. Okay. And then we're going to chain 2, 1 and 2, and back into that corner space, we are going to place a shell. Okay, and there is our short side is now expanding. So in round 1, we only had 1 shell on the short side, and now for round 2, we've got 2 shells on the short side. So of course it's going to keep building up with more rounds that you do. And then on the other side, we just continue on as usual. You guys know the drill by now. Just 1 shell stitch into each shell space. Okay, and then you'll come to your next corner and you will do the same thing we did here. So once you get all, don't you just love how these colors are coming together? Love it. Okay, so when you get all the way around and you come to your second last corner, you're gonna shell, chain 2, shell, and then I'm gonna meet up with you here. Remember, we only did a partial shell here. I'm gonna meet up with you at the very end just to show you how I close off round number 2. Okay, I've come up to the end of round number 2. And so you can see I've changed colors yet again, which makes me excited because it means I'm going through all of my scraps. And I love how these colors are coming together. Okay, so we have our last corner that we need to finish, which was technically our first corner. So remember, we have 3 of these chains already count as a double crochet. So to create a shell, we need to have 3 double crochets. So we're going to place 2 more into this space here. And those of you guys that have been following me for a while, you know this is one of my favorite ways to end off a granny corner. Okay, so there's 2 double crochets, and then the chain 3 counts as 1. So what I'm gonna do is I'm now gonna find the top of that 3rd chain, and I'm just going to slip stitch to join, and that corner is complete. And so now when I begin round number 3, I'm already in the corner. So remember, at the beginning of round 2, we had to slip stitch over. Now we're already here. So round number 2 is complete. So now you can see that the spine of your work is now expanding, and you've got this nice long lacy rectangle. So that's the other side there. Okay. And now round number 3 is going to be the way you start all of your rounds. So I'm going to take you through one more full round because you'll see that the short side will start expanding, and then everything from there is just a repeat. So round number 3, we're going to begin by slip stitching into the corner, and as we did before, we're going to start off by chaining 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And by the way, you'll notice that I've gone back to my 6mm hook because I'm back using a regular medium 4-weight yarn. So that way they sit nice and even there. Okay, so chain 3 plus a chain 2 is part of a shell and a corner. And now we're going to go back into that corner space and place another shell stitch. So we always start by creating a partial corner. Okay, and then you just go into the space and you work your shells as usual. So pretty straightforward. So I'm going to leave you here, okay, because you know what to do. You're going to shell all the way, and then I'm going to meet up with you again one more time because now our short side has grown. So I'm just going to take you through this next corner here, and then you'll be good to go for all the subsequent rounds. So go ahead and go down the long side of round number 3, and I'll meet you at that corner. Okay, so I've just finished that first corner there, so you can see how it's just coming around the bend. And now this time I've got a space before I hit my next corner. So as your scarf grows in rounds, your short side will also grow. So now instead of skipping right to the corner, I actually have a shell space that I'm going to work into. So I just work a shell, and then that will take me to my next corner. Okay, so now I'm in my corner space. So I'm going to do my usual. I'm going to place a shell stitch, which is 3 double crochets, and then I'm going to chain 2 and go back into that space and place a shell stitch. Okay, just like that. So again, my short side is expanding, as is my long side. So the next time I come around here, and for all of your rounds, once you work the corner, you just simply work a shell into the shell space, a shell into the shell space until you get to the next corner. Same principle as if you're working the long side. So for those of you that are a little newer, I just want to take you through that. And now I'm just going to continue on, finish round number 3. It's getting quite long. Okay, there's my second last corner. I'm just going to place a shell, chain 2 shell, shell into the shell space, and then this is our corner space. A little bit of that darker purple was left over. And so you're just going to place 2 more double crochets, slip stitch to the top of your 3rd chain, and round 3 will be complete. Now for subsequent rounds, you just keep repeating the same process over and over again. Now I'm going to go ahead and do a total of 8 rounds. Now you're going to do as many rounds as you see fit. If you want your scarf to be super wide, then maybe you're going to do 10 or 12 rounds. And if you want yours to be a little thinner, you'll do less rounds. So other than that, it's going to be super easy. There's no counting involved. You can just watch a great show and whip up your granny rectangle scarf. So I'm going to go ahead and do my rounds, and I'll meet back up with you to show you my final scarf. And here it is, the final scarf completed. So I went ahead and did my 8 rounds, and as you can see, I used up all of my scrap pink and purple in the middle, which I just think came out fantastic. And then I had a whole bunch of white left over, so I just used it to create this nice thick kind of border, and I'm very happy with how it came out. Now I kind of debated making it a little bit wider, but I think because it's got a lot of length, I left it as is, because you can wrap it around your neck several times. So there we have it, the granny rectangle scarf. So for those of you that have been kind of curious about making the rectangle a lot longer, here it is. And it was such a great way to use up a lot of the leftover yarn that I had. So pretty straightforward, using the shell stitch and of course following the procedure to create your granny rectangle. Now, if you have any further questions, don't be shy. Make sure to leave them for me in the comment box down below. And some of you do like to send me messages directly via email, which I absolutely love. So feel free to email me at info@crochetcrafty.com. And don't forget to come visit me on the website at crochetcrafty.com and check out lots of the additional bonus tools. We've got sizing charts on there for all kinds of garments, hats, scarves, mitts, that kind of thing, as well as make sure to sign up for my monthly newsletter, because I gift you a free written pattern every month at the end of every issue. And if you're looking for more written patterns, I am working on beefing up my portfolio on my Etsy shop, which is called Crochet Crafty Canada. And if you are new here and you liked hanging out with us, make sure to press the subscribe button. Come hang out with me every Wednesday morning when I upload a brand new tutorial. And if you like this type of project, make sure to give me a thumbs up. And that way I'll know to keep making more projects like this for you. So for now, I hope you enjoy your granny rectangle scarf, or maybe you're gifting it to someone. And I hope you have an amazing day. As always, happy crocheting. Take good care of yourself, guys, and I will see you in next week's session. Bye-bye.